Hey, I used to have to deal with this all the time.
Kitchen garden. What's a kitchen garden? You know nothing about plants. Okay. Or flowers. I'm opposed to living. I'm opposed to this now. I'm what you could, my God, inquiries. I'm going to do it. Right? You're going to laugh.
I'm probably You know, my friend...
But I will not give them the blues.
My friend didn't think it would work, but she actually grew a asparagus without even realizing that she had planted it, and apparently it takes a couple years,
Yep.
she forgot about it.
Yep.
Just came shooting up this spring. She's already eating it. It's awesome.
Asparagus is wonderful.
I've never even seen it grow in the ground before. I've never seen it.
You obviously grew up in the city.
I did.
Oh, okay.
My family was not, we did not camp, we did not farm.
My family's pretty much all agriculture. So,
Yeah.
you know,
My parents were accountants.
oh, smart people.
Okay, 5-minute break's over. My name is Bob Pulaski.
Bob, just a moment. Councilmember Kurtzwell, go ahead.
I'd like to move to go back on the record.
I'll second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Now, if I may, Bob Pulaski from the South Lyon Historical Society.
I am one of the directors with the society, and just going to make a brief presentation regarding our proposed barn project for the historic village. This is something that's been in the works more or less for the last several years, actually. I've been a member for almost 10 years now, and this is something that's been discussed most of that time. So, to begin, I'm just going to read through this. Should take me about 10-15 minutes, and then we'll have a question and answer period. And I have a lot of my cohorts here. If I can't answer the question, they may be able to. South Lyon Area Historical Society has had a long-term goal of locating a barn and a house at the historic village. Recently, the Society has located a small barn that once served as a carriage house on the Roper Farm, located about 1/3 mile south of 8 Mile Road on the west side of Pontiac Trail in Salem Township. This is about 2 miles from our village. The Roper family, owners of the barn, have graciously offered to donate the barn to the Society and the City of South Lyon in return for us removing the barn from the Roper Farm property. Jim Roper, who is deceased, was a longtime supporter of the Society and the historic village. Through membership in the Michigan Barn Preservation Network, we have been speaking with 4 contractors over the past several months that specialize in historic barn relocation and reconstruction. All 4 contractors, namely K&L Construction Improvements, JDS Historical Construction, Herb and Chris Hintz, and Tom Cure, have been in discussion with the Society since May of last year. We have received a proposal from Herb and Chris Hintz and would like to review the proposal with the city in order to secure approval for the project and to possibly receive assistance with funding. Please note we are awaiting proposals from KL Construction Improvements, JDS Historical Construction, and Tom Cure. The next page in the presentation shows a picture of the north side of the barn as it stands today. The reasons for needing a historic barn at the village. The South Lyon Area Historical Society mission is, in part, to give our community a better understanding and appreciation of our local history. By showcasing the agricultural and equestrian history of South Lyon, we demonstrate how agriculture was an important source of livelihood, as well as forming our community. The South Lyon area has a long history of horse breeding, at one time becoming the horse breeding capital of Michigan. Many considered the barn to be a farmer's greatest asset. It is important to showcase a typical historic barn, including historic construction, architecture, and reasons for the barn's existence. We plan to add a barn quilt that would honor South Lyon's heritage. The barn quilt would become part of the barn quilt tours, making our historic village a destination for visitors. The barn build date, current structure details. The barn build date is estimated to be between 1880 and 1906, and it was built at its current location. The structure footprint is 30 feet long, 22 feet wide, and approximately 20 feet high at the roof peak. There are 6 stalls in the current structure, most likely used for 2 teams of horses and a buggy. A full second floor was used for storage with a crude ladder mounted to the north interior wall for access from the ground floor. The ground floor is a concrete slab. There is a lean-to structure attached to the barn on the south side that was probably used as a corn crib. There's also a lean-to on the west side of the barn that appears to have been used for storage. The next page shows the east side of the barn, which is the side that faces Pontiac Trail. Our goals are to keep the relocated barn as true to form as possible, circa 1880 to 1906. All added construction as necessary to be built in a historical manner. Develop excitement among South Lyon residents and businesses for our upcoming 150th anniversary as a city in 2023. Provide a new educational benefit for students and residents about our rich agricultural history, as well as featuring the area's importance in horse breeding and racing. Demonstrate structure construction methods as developed and practiced by 19th century carpenters. A temporary portable sawmill will create interest with our residents during the construction. We will come one building closer to achieving the historic village goal of demonstrating 19th century living as it was in South Lyon and Lyon Township. And on that page, it shows the south side, which also shows the lean-to that's currently on the barn. So our proposal from Hintz Contractors, they propose a hybrid construction. We would choose the current barn components that are in good shape and combine with new construction. No plywood would be used anywhere in the structure. We would keep post and beam construction throughout. Parts chosen from the current barn will be clean and old paint and asbestos disposed. Parts will be washed and permitted for move to the historic village site. A temporary portable sawmill will be located at the historic village for cutting the new dimensional lumber. The base will consist of an 8-inch concrete block foundation covered with fieldstone fascia and topped with metal. Poured concrete slab for the ground floor. Exterior walls would consist of new oak dimensional lumber, siding combined when possible with current barn siding sections. A 10-inch wide by 4-inch thick sill, there'll be 10-inch wide by 4-inch thick sill beams. 7 windows with a sliding barn door and a second floor hayloft door. The loft will consist of oak slab boards for the floor. The loft will extend half length of the main floor with a substantial railing for safety. There will be stairs to the loft consisting of either 2x8 or 2x10 oak stair runners with substantial railing. The interior ceiling will consist of oak beams using the original pieces when possible. There will be full exposure to the loft and the main floor. The roof will consist of steel shingles, cut similarly to current style on the present barn, for durability and fire resistance. There will be a 2-foot eave overhang and new construction cupola to aid in floor-to-ceiling airflow. Estimated construction time period would be 6 to 8 months, including demolition of the old barn and relocation of the saved pieces. And the photograph on that page shows one of the 3 portable sawmills that Hintz Contractors uses on their construction sites. The next picture is the west end of the barn with the storage lean-to. The next page shows the plat where we would propose to put the barn. We have since been discussing with Parks and Recreation, and I think that this is going to change based on what Parks and Recreation and the society and the city manager, we've all been communicating with each other and having some meetings and that. So we didn't have another plat to work with for this presentation, so that's why this one is included, because this was the original one. The project costs and miscellaneous items. The proposed costs and terms, $140,000 to $160,000. This excludes permits, concrete slab, electrical components, and installation of the same. It also does not include utilities at the original barn and historic village sites. We will need a water source, 20 amp electricity, and waste disposal, which will be required for the construction. This is a 12% profit margin. Hintz usually has a 30% profit margin. The contractor requests 25% down, balance due in increments to be determined. There would be a 1-year warranty on all new materials and workmanship. The new construction alternate, also proposed by Chris Hintz, is a $120,000 estimate. This would be for a new structure, totally new structure. The original barn would not be dismantled, and the ownership would be retained by the Roper family. Contractor history. Herb Hintz has been relocating and constructing barns in Michigan for over 50 years. Chris Hintz, his grandson, has been working in the business for 23 years and will take over the business this year. So what is next? To be determined. First of all, fundraising. We recently have met with Ron Campbell, the principal planner for Oakland County Economic Development, who is also a preservation architect. With his guidance, we are developing a fundraising plan, including potential grants. We will also solicit financial assistance and sponsorships from local businesses. We will conduct a Historic Society membership drive this year, including a monthly booth at the farmers market. We would need possible financial assistance from the city. Do we need to determine compliance with the American Disabilities Act? We would determine a contractor and the cost for the concrete slab. And finally, we would determine the contractor and cost for the electric service, which would include the installation of cable, outlet, and lights. So we are open for questions.
Councilmember Kibble, why don't you kick us off down there?
Looking at the map that you've got for the village, this doesn't look to me as, it's not the same one that last Mark Russell configuration had been.
That's correct.
So this is the existing drive and all that through that area?
Yes.
So is the intention to still entertain the idea of Russell's newer version?
Yes, actually, the last meeting we had with Russell and with Parks and Recreation reps, we did come to a agreement, and we're waiting on that new plat. He's working on it.
Okay.
So I had hoped to have it for this presentation, but obviously it didn't happen.
I think this is cool, and I can understand why you guys, things of this nature are something that you can just hug, you know, it's like a step through time and where we came from and all that kind of stuff, and it really does end up registering with people. I guess one of the concerns that I've got is just how much damage there is to all the wall oak. There's water problems all over the place on that, and I'm just wondering how much of the actual building will be able to be in play in the reconfiguration, and how much is going to end up needing to be new milled material. And if it gets to a point where you've got a substantial more amount of new material in the thing, would it make more sense to simply build a recreation rather than try to save an existing but very broke down plant? Do you understand where I'm going?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
and we've talked about that with...
There's a lot of money involved in too that's offset by doing that.
Yes,
So-
and obviously it would be, his estimate is about $20,000 minimum less to just build a whole new structure that would be somewhat similar to that.
He's got 75% to 87 and some portion of that from what the price of the reconfiguration would be,
Yes.
so.
Both him and his grandfather Herb have looked at the structure thoroughly, and without actually starting to take things apart in that, they feel that probably everything from what you call the gutter line up could be saved, but the four walls themselves, it is questionable. The lean-tos that are on the building, we don't plan to move those or take those. They will just be disposed of. And then obviously the post beams that are inside, they think that those are in good enough shape to be
Even
able
at
to
the
use
floor?
those. Pardon?
Even at the floor? Because usually,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Yes.
Because the horses and stuff can beat the heck out of them. So.
And then the stalls themselves that are in there, we didn't really talk about that. At least I don't recall. I don't think we really talked about the condition of the stalls themselves in there. Overall, I would say, and then let me also say, right now the barn has a full second floor. Our intention is just to have a half second floor.
That was actually the next thing I wanted to ask, is if you can configure that stuff to be either walls or something. If you can use that rather than flooring, use it as something that would protect the outside, so.
Yeah, I
Is it just too short? I mean, it's 22 by 30, you said, so
Oh, you're talking about the floor that we
the
wouldn't
planks
use.
that are going to be, you're only going to use half of that deck. Maybe you could restructure those to be some other component of the rebuild.
Right. I don't have the answer to that. I don't know. That's a question we could ask. The reason that we only want a half floor in there is so that we want people to be able to see whether they're on the main floor or the loft floor, see all of the open construction, because that's the big part of the history of the building is the post and beam construction. So,
Yeah, if you're looking up at the underside of the floor, it's not nearly as exciting.
right, yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's something that I certainly wouldn't be able to make a judgment right at this stage of the game, but I would love to have some more information as to how much you think that could be harvested from the original. See, there's also, you talked about the cleaning and the asbestos abatement and things of that nature. All that stuff gets kind of expensive too when you're trying to put it into a dump. You can't just take it up to Salem and throw it in there. So all that stuff needs to be part of the calculus about what is the actual best decision to move forward. Because you could build a brand new one that looked exactly like that and had exactly the same features. Some of the hardware you could probably harvest from it and reinstall it into the new building, so you'd get some of that sense of the heritage in that. And I'm not suggesting that this is where I think we need to go, but I do want to say that there's an awful lot of costs that aren't accounted for here that could really escalate this project an awful lot more than the 160. So, you know, I'd like to end up having a barn more than only doing it if it's this barn kind of a thing, so.
And I think that we would like to get at least one more estimate for our proposal. We realize that it's not good business sense to just have one. And so our intention is to get at least one more proposal. And I'm sure everybody knows, I'll just repeat this, that in good financial times, which we've been in recent years, contractors are so busy, it is very difficult to get them to respond. And that's, we've been in that boat. That's the problem I've been having with trying to reach contractors in that. And
Especially specialized stuff like this.
yes, this is very specialized stuff. The Michigan Barn Preservation Network has probably 50 contractors listed on it. I've called almost all 50 contractors, and I've only had response from like maybe 10% of them. So it's not the easiest thing to deal with right now.
Well, thank you.
Councilmember Kennedy.
So just a couple of questions here, Bob. What are we going to use the barn for? I mean, I'm looking at it as, is this going to be something that we can develop some sort of a revenue stream from, kind of like the Northville Mill Race situation where we can, you know, rent out the buildings for activities? We could have a wedding in the chapel. We could have photographs in the gazebo. We could have a small gathering in the barn. We could do something like that with this.
Our intention actually is to, on the main floor, is to have historical displays from the city of South Lyon and the surrounding area. We already have some material, machinery in that are in storage that we want to put on that main floor. And then the second floor would be used probably for storage. Our intention at this point is not necessarily to use the barn to raise funds or to have like a wedding in it or something like that. We have the chapel right now for weddings, although that has been, I think, pretty much on hold because of the pandemic. But bottom line is, our intention of the barn would be to actually have historical displays in there.
So what would be different with this barn as opposed to going to Mayberry or what you would see in Greenfield Village?
The displays here would be from the South Lyon area.
Do you think anybody can tell the difference?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
Anybody would notice the difference between a cultivator that's used out in South Lyon versus one that's used over in Northville? I'm just asking.
Yeah.
The other point is, I mean, I look at how challenged the Historical Society is getting people to come to the museum, okay? You're out there advertising all the time, and the museum is full of interesting things, and people aren't coming and breaking down the door to see that. That's part of the challenge that I look at. The barn would be great, but it'd be better if we could have a dual purpose for it. I certainly would hesitate to spend any money to have another building there that I'm begging people to come see. And, I mean, that's where we're at right now with what's in the freight house and so forth. The other question I have for you is, if the decision's made to go ahead with this, I'm assuming it wouldn't start until you've raised $120,000, $160,000. And how long is it going to take you? What do you project it's going to take to raise that kind of money? Because I really, just speaking as one of seven, don't see that the city's going to fund $160,000 for it. You talk about fundraising. How much of that $160,000 do you estimate you could raise towards that? And what's your estimate as far as how long it's going to take to do that?
Right.
We don't have an answer to that.
I kind of do.
our approach to the fundraising is...
Ma'am, could we have you come down to the microphone? Please introduce yourself, too. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Victoria Klassman. I'm 37 Meadowbrook. I am the vice president of the society. Okay, it's a lot of money. The society does have some of the funds already that had been put aside from years ago. Working with Ron Campbell from Oakland County, his suggestion is that we first go after the larger amounts from personal donations. We already have a person who is going to be talking to some of our more affluent members of our community in hopes that they will give us some money. Once we kind of have that kind of going, then we have a lot of grants that we can apply to. We don't qualify for preservation grants because we're moving it. Michigan is really funny about that. If you left it where it's at, they'll give you money, but they don't want you to move it. But we do have, because we are going to be displaying the agricultural and equestrian history, we have grants in those areas. Because it's also going to be part of the city, we can actually have municipal, thank you, grants that we can apply for. So there's several different types of grants, including a Michigan Historical Museum grant and a federal grant. And we also plan to do a great deal of fundraising towards the end. Like you're saying, once we reach to about 120,000, we want to be there by next summer. If we are there by next summer, we will then be fundraising, around here to cover that last bit. Now, that was at the recommendation of Ron Campbell, that's how we do that type of fundraising.
Okay, so, Victoria, you talked about getting some major donors to commit some significant funds for this. And you talked about the grants. And if we tally that all up, what does that represent? Do you have a ballpark figure of the 160? What
I'm
percentage
hoping
that would
that
be?
by next summer, because we want the barn to be there in the summer. It's going to be South Lyon's 150th. It's a great time for this type of project. He's going to be on site if we go with this one gentleman. He's going to have a sawmill. People will be able to come, be able to enjoy it. They'll get fundraising that way. But if we can reach that 120 by spring, then reaching the rest of that amount won't be that far-fetched. And I think we could be able to do that locally.
Okay. You understand what part of my concern is, and you and I have talked about this. I know Larry and I have talked about it. We just went through the budget workshop in which the Historical Society put forth that we have the 4 existing buildings right now, that we have antiquated HVAC equipment in. We need to look at replacing that. We've already experienced failure with the unit in the schoolhouse that leaked, and the condensate ended up damaging the floor and so forth. And I've asked Larry to look at, I've asked the city manager to have a department head work with the Historical Society to project how much useful life is in those units, because if they come back and say, those things all need to be replaced right now, that's another $80,000 to $100,000 that the city has to put out for the mechanicals on the buildings we already have. So it makes it very tough to come up with any additional money on something else that we want to add.
Well, right now for the barn, the only thing that we'll have is electric. We're not planning on plumbing or heating.
I understand that. I'm talking about the move itself. If you come up short from that 160,000 and you expect, as that bullet said in there, contribution from the city, the city's
Well,
going to
we're
look at it.
hoping to get contribution from the city, but in all honesty, we're well aware of the city's budget.
Okay.
So with the help with the foundation, I think is very generous of the city. Maybe next year's budget, if you guys get a windfall, maybe you can think of us. But I think for the most part, we are going into this knowing that it's going to be up to the society to raise these funds.
Okay. If that's actually the perspective you're taking, that's